Wow. That's the best I could come up with. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the show. So glad to see you all once again. If you're new here, thank you for stopping by. This is the show that you've been looking for. If you want to see reviews of each and every episode of cartoons that we grew up on in the 80s and 90s, then you're in the right place. Hop below, hit subscribe, and click the like button because I think you're going to enjoy this episode as we talk about the second season episode of Batman Beyond, Hooked Up, which originally aired on November 13th, 1999.
Put me back in. It hurts out here, please.
Another episode dealing with virtual reality and bringing back Spellbinder. A lot of great things that are happening in this episode, and also dealing with addiction in a different way than what we've seen in the past, like Winning Edge or some of those episodes. But we'll talk all about that right after our 60-second rundown of the episode, complete synopsis of the episode, just so we're all on the same page in 60 seconds or less before that bomb blows up. We see this kid in a rock concert. Everybody loves him. And then he find out he's in virtual reality. He goes, oh, put me back in. And he goes, oh, you need some more money. And then Batman's out on patrol and he sees him because he's a kid from his high school, Donnie. And he goes, oh, he's robbing some stuff. And he's trying to stop him. Oh, you can't do this. And then we see that Max and Terry are working together to find out because she knows Donnie goes to his family, not so great home life. And then he goes to the arcade where he hangs out, and they confront Max and Terry, and they go, oh, you got to check out this virtual reality, this underground place. She goes, oh, let's go there. And she gets hooked up, and she has this fantasy about a great home life. And then Terry goes, you can't do that. And then Batman sees her out in the world robbing from a car, and he goes, you got to stop doing this. And so he gives her this injection to kind of get her out of that. And he goes back and he calls Bruce, and he goes, oh, everything be fine. And wham, he gets knocked out. And then they go back to Spellbinder's place, and he goes, I can't believe I let this happen. And she's, oh, don't hurt him, he'll be okay. And then he fights Spellbinder. We're up to the final battle. He goes and fights Spellbinder, and then Max apologizes and goes, oh, I almost got us both killed. And that's the episode. So close.
Rough night?
A great setup to this episode, seeing Donnie at this rock concert, and everybody is and he's the star and everybody loves him. And what a cool introduction of the episode to then reveal, oh, that's not really what's happening. He's in some virtual reality fantasy, which is cool, and that it's Spellbinder. I think that these stories are starting to get better and better, where we have, again, a returning character that they move the story forward. He's not doing the same thing that he did before, but now he has figured out a new way of getting money, which is getting these kids addicted to this virtual reality system and having them go steal for him. And so it's not the same gimmick again. It's still crime and it's still bad, but kind of in a different way.
You want more? You know what you have to do.
Side note, in the future, we talk about the prediction of the future and how things will be then, and this reality of the future versus what things are actually now 20 years later. And the credits, the money source is now credits, and they talk about credits. Yeah, I think that we're kind of along those lines where money is all digital and stuff, but the system they have in place is not very efficient. It looks like it's just a stack of credit cards. Those could all be, unless our currency system is going to be just a bunch of gift cards or prepaid Visa cards in the future. It doesn't seem like a very efficient system because you could just have it all in one card. But then again, you have this one card and that gets lost, and then you're, kind of in trouble.
Spare some creds?
Get a job, Dreg.
I like seeing elements like this where they kind of deal with that. What's real? What's fantasy? What's happening? And certainly in the animated world, it's easy to go in and out of that. And it takes you a moment to go, wait, is this somebody else's fantasy or is this actually happening? And I like that. I think they could have leaned into it a little bit more, but certainly what they did do with it was pretty cool.
Oh, Wendell!
And I think that this episode, this storyline kind of hits that sweet spot where it is certainly a story that involves kids, classmates of Terry and his high school buddies. but is also a big enough story for Batman to be involved in. And I think that they finally hit that dynamic really well. We've seen other episodes where it's like, boy, this is too much for a high schooler to be dealing with. And then we've seen episodes where it's like, oh, this is just a teenage drama kind of thing. This one really kind of hits that, where we got Spellbinder, who is a very formidable threat and a villain worthy of Batman, but he's using kids to have them steal money for him. And he's targeting these kids that are susceptible to this, that are willing to go that extra mile and steal and get money through unsavory sources, is even more so something that Batman should be involved in stopping.
Come on, Tare. If it was dangerous, you think they'd let kids do it?
And I totally fell for it. I was watching this and saw Max coming home and sitting down at the dinner table and having a meal with her family, and things are going well, and completely did not put the pieces together that she was in a fantasy world.
Of course we'll be
That's
there.
great.
Aren't you being silly?
We're all so proud of you.
Which was both a great reveal to go, oh, she's in the virtual reality, but also was kind of sad that that's her fantasy, is just having a nice meal with her family, and is really kind of heartbreaking when you think about it, that you have Donnie, that, okay, that seems likely that a kid would fantasize about being a rock star and being on stage and you know, getting in the limo with all these girls and stuff. But for Max's fantasy to be much more rooted and much more simple, if you will, but not simple to her, that she just wants to have a nice meal with her family and have them care about what she's doing during the day, is kind of a heartbreaking scene, but also totally tricked me. I think because it was so kind of rooted in reality that I totally fell for that, and then felt bad for Max in that moment.
How was your particle physics test today?
Another 100.
That's our girl.
And again, this deals with another element of addiction, which is this addiction to pleasure or to the virtual reality kind of thing. And this episode wasn't as much of a public service announcement as The Winning Edge was, but certainly a real thing. And particularly at this period of time, like, this was in the height of, you know, video games and video game addiction, and certainly kind of those early stages of virtual reality. And I know that there was groups that were going, this is too much. I mean, we're never going to see our kids, and we're looking at them now turning into zombies when they're playing video games. How much worse can it be with virtual reality? And I know a lot of different sci-fi stories dealt with this kind of idea. But it's a very real thing. And actually what Bruce Wayne says in there about...
Most of them have turned up in hospitals with overdose levels of serotonin in their brains.
And that being a real thing then, but certainly even now, which they I don't think could have predicted, is the advent of social media, and that idea of us just scrolling through social media just to see those clicks of serotonin and posting something and getting likes and that making you feel good about yourself, and scrolling through to try to get those effects of those kind of dopamine releases in your brain, is a very real thing and a very real addiction that again, I don't think that we talk about it enough, and so that this kind of masked around this kind of fantasy sci-fi kind of idea, but actually is pretty realistic and a kind of addiction that I don't think as many people acknowledge as being an addiction, because it doesn't have the apparent harmful effects as drugs or alcohol or things like that, but also very damaging and not healthy especially for kids going through that, but also for anybody, and I try personally to kind of limit my social media involvement for those reasons, that I don't want to get so hooked on that or so stuck in that world. But yeah, a very real addiction that they kind of deal with in this episode.
To feel the love you never get in the real world. It's no surprise that addiction follows so quickly.
I don't say this very often, but this certainly, I think, could have been a two-parter. I think that they set up kind of these ideas or these elements And it felt like there was certainly a lot that was fit into this episode, but I feel like they could have done more with this and even went further with it into a two-parter. Maybe they'll revisit this in the future, but I think that by introducing the Spellbinder in a previous episode, this is the kind of things that you can do with an established character that we already know what he can do and what he's capable of. To now see him doing more and carrying that even further is kind of a neat use of the character, and I'm looking forward to seeing hopefully where he goes in the future to see if they touch on this again later.
Who made you the pleasure police?
And also we're seeing Max becoming more involved in Batman and Terry's lives, I guess you could say, dual life, in that he actually goes to her for help with finding Donnie, because she knows Donnie better than he does, and her wanting to do more and wanting to get more involved. And he kind of trusts her and lets her do more and lets her be involved to an extent, but then she kind of stumbles backwards there and gets caught up in this addiction, which I like their choice of having that affect Max versus it again being something that's affecting Terry, like they did in Spellbinder Spellbound, where he was affected by this neurological fantasy thing that he created, that they had him on the outside of it trying to help Max, which I thought was pretty cool.
You're smarter than this, Max.
And then, of course, this coming around where she needs to ask forgiveness of Terry for almost getting them both killed. And again, dealing with that trust element, which I think is kind of an overarching theme over at least these last few episodes of like trusting and what they are, how far they can let each other go, and this kind of Batman family element that is, we all have a role to play and we all got to do our thing, but we got to be able to trust each other. I think that was kind of a neat wrap up to the episode.
Well, congratulations, because you're a part of it now.
So when it comes time to rank this episode, I really enjoyed it. I think that this episode, maybe I said I wanted to see it as a two-parter, but I think the fact that it's not a two-parter means that they were able to cram a lot into this, and it feels like a very full, fulfilling episode that deals with an existing character, deals with some addiction, deals with some real elements that they embellish for sci-fi purposes, and just very cool, very, very neat tone to this episode, and a lot of great elements. So for those reasons, it falls at the number 3 spot of my favorite episodes so far, just below Dead Man's Hand. I think just because I kind of like those villains, that those longevity of that gang a little bit better, but I have it beating out Blackout, which I kind of struggled a little bit with, because I really like the episode Blackout, and I like what they're doing with the Ink character in that and establishing her and setting her up. But at the same time, this episode just had, I think, more layers and more elements that were dealt with in this.
It worked out okay.
So let me know. I think I asked this before, but do you have any experience with virtual reality? Have you dug into that? I know now on computers they have games that you can connect to with virtual reality type helmets, kind of more submersive. But have you played virtual reality in any sort of arcade or have that system at home? And why do you think that isn't more commonplace now? I feel like the technology has advanced, and it's been 20 years since we've kind of first rolled that out. I know that they're dealing with augmented reality now, which maybe is the new wave of that. But let me know any experiences you have with that in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this episode, please click the like button. If you want to see more episodes like this, just hit subscribe. I have new episodes coming out every week, like the next episode, Rats. So you don't want to miss that, but if you can't wait until then, I do have some other episodes right over here that you can click on to watch other reviews that I've done right over here, so be sure to check those out. As always, thank you so much for watching. I'm Andy Knode. I'll see you soon.